Thank you so much for being here. We had a great day. Lots of ideas. Really want to thank everyone who has participated and thank those of you who are here tonight. And I just have to excuse my appearance. I just ran a 5K to benefit Meals on Wheels. Yay. But this has been an exciting day, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what the outcome is of some ideas, and then hitting the back tables again and going through them in more depth. So am I turning it over to Arnold? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome, everybody. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. We've had 2 sessions, and people were sort of idea generators. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, we're going to attempt to give you an overview that gives you a sense of the day, shows the concepts that came out of today's charrette, and then we're going to sort of break into table sessions for discussions on those where you can have sort of a more face-to-face chance to look at the options and priorities that came out today for sort of the concepts that we explored. So by way of introduction, what I want to talk about is sort of how we approach today and what was driving today. Our focus geographically, which is behind me but also up in this really big map, is to look at the area known as the South Millyard area, so Granite Street southward, Queen City Ave as our southern boundary, so heading north, most of Elm Street as our eastern boundary, and Willow a little bit as it goes down, and the B&M rail bed as it cuts down towards Confusion Corner at Scilly and Queen City Avenue. So geographically, this was our area of focus on the river bank on the east side. So as we gathered today to do this, why look at this? One of the things that I'm going to have Todd talk about when he comes up is to talk about just how much success you've all had as a city. When I do charrettes, one of the things we're often talking about is a lack of energy, is a lack of economic potential. And what's interesting is you're dealing with a huge amount of success. So the question is, success brings challenges, and what do you do to respond to those challenges in this geographic area? So certainly you're about to enter a new master planning process for your city. You've got lots of things going on with your transit-oriented development project that's going on, your TOD. But one of the interesting things that is an opportunity that's coming up to engage in a grant application process with the United States Department of Transportation for what's called a BUILD grant. And BUILD grant enables dollars that you normally could not access through your standard state DOT to do projects that go beyond the norm. So we're very much, while this works with lots of other planning things you're doing, we're aiming for an application for the BUILD grant, which is due July 15. And a very important part of that is to look at it and say, what do people in that community think about what we can achieve with this BUILD grant, looking at this geographic area? And so the BUILD grant criteria are really that you're addressing issues of safety, you're partnering with key folks that are around, that you've got facilities and you're currently in the midst of a robust process to keep things in good repair, that this is helping you achieve economic competitiveness, that there's environmental sustainability built into this, and this helps increase quality of life. Those green criteria are your primary criteria for this. And the great thing is what you're talking about meets a lot of these criteria for a BUILD grant. I think you're going to have a competitive application. But we needed to take that dive with you all today to say, well, what exactly does this look like? What exactly are the key issues that are going on, and what are the responses and the ideas for how you might work this together? So like any project, you need to start with a thorough understanding of existing conditions. When we did our 2 sessions this morning, we did a 9 to noon session, we did a 1 to 4 session, we began with an overview of, well, what are those existing conditions that are going on out there? So I'm going to turn it over to Todd Connors, who's going to sort of give the abbreviated version that he gave to the folks who participated today to bring you up to that same level of knowledge.
Thanks, Arnold. Thanks, everybody, for coming back or coming down. I'm going to keep this much shorter than this morning. So this morning I gave you a really broad overview of infrastructure projects, whether it's traffic signals, bridge rehabilitation, sewer projects, trail projects. Now we're starting to focus more into our project area. And that project area, would you like me to show it there?
Sure.
I already did. The project area that we start to focus in on today is Queen City Avenue to the south, and the Merrimack River to our west, the Granite Street corridor where we have our adaptive signals project, and then Willow Street to the east. This area starts to define where we work today. We have a number of initiatives, adaptive signals, paving projects, sewer projects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these are all to support the maintenance of our infrastructure and the new development that we see happening in the area. We have hotel projects under construction. We have residential projects under construction. We have a creative adaptive reuse of an old shoe factory under construction. These all require additional services. These all require new transportation solutions, and it's important to us to look at this area and find out what you need. With that, Arnold, back to you.
So what we did was, with everybody sort of coming to this knowledge that there's a lot going on, but there's also a lot of adaptive infrastructure work going in to make things better, is we engaged in what we call a charrette process. And so that charrette process, and Ted, I'm going to ask you to drive. So that charrette process, after we got everybody here sort of up to speed on existing conditions, one thing that's important to remember is this is a brainstorming format. This is a high-level sort of exercise that stays at 10,000 feet in a sense. So it's not a design charrette where we're figuring out widths of sidewalks, or we're making determinations and final decisions. It's a way to explore concepts. But it's a way to explore concepts that are sort of prioritized and important to the community. So the charge we gave to the groups when they gathered, we asked them to work with 2 questions, but the overriding question was this, and it's going to be on the tables when you go to look at these plans in small groups later, was thinking about the future. What are the elements of a more connected, more functional, and more economically vibrant South Milliard area? And the way that we asked people to attack these questions, rather than sort of each going through a long paragraph, was to break it into a couple questions. And the first question is, in this area, within this framework, what are the problems or opportunities? So the problems, it's a chance to vent and say, it's really hard for my grandmother to cross granite, when she's going to a ball game, because it takes a long time to go across. Or I've always had this issue. The opportunities question, which is asked at the same time, is a chance to say, I've always dreamed of being able to walk, this whole connected pathway of an old rail bed, and currently that might be missing. And so, but that's the opportunity I think we have. And then so they go through that, and we went through an exercise where the tables are facilitated, and stickies go up on the wall with ideas on each of those Post-it notes. And after about 20 minutes, we say, now we want you to flip that lens. And we want you to say not what's a problem or what's an opportunity, but what is our reaction? We can take action to change things. And so what is our action that we take or solution to a problem? And then we went through an exercise for 20 minutes of sort of saying, well, okay, if I want to make that connection, this has to happen. If I want to see this happen, this is what we need to engage in to make that happen. And those all end up on the wall. And then what we did was to sort of bring those out after we brainstormed through problems, opportunities, solutions, and reactions, was all the groups reported out. And we had a whole wall full of concepts and ideas which we grouped in themes. And after we grouped those in themes, we prioritized, because there's way more to do than you can ever do with limited people time, capital budgets, all the things you have to think about. So what rises to the top is what we ask next in the next slide. Actually, got one more. So what we talked about for outcomes, for draft prioritized outcomes, we're going to give you the top 5 and then show you a couple other ones that came out of this. And this was based on how people sort of said, this is what I feel is most important. So the first one for this area is connecting South Commercial Street to the existing street network, especially towards the east and the south, and providing multiple options in both the short and long terms to make those connections. So hit the next one. So because we're working at a high level, when I orient you, here's the ballpark. Granite. Here is the B&M rail bed, which is currently disused as it goes down. And so what people began to identify was to say, where are there opportunities right now where there's only this one point to come out of possibly making other connections? Where could these things happen? Knowing that we're working at a conceptual level, and then later on we're going to dig into the feasibilities of each of these, but where could connections happen? So a couple of things that came out that were really strong contenders. We're thinking about making movements that go close sort of to the south of Market Basket, thinking about movements that go out towards Gas Street and come over to Elm here, thinking about Queen City Avenue, using the rail bed to connect out to Queen City Avenue here. So those are sort of the broad thinking, knowing that we want to get more connectivity out of the South Commercial and the South Milliard area, because that helps to mitigate congestion because it's currently exiting from one point. The second priority, and they tie together, is increasing pedestrian accessibility, comfort, and safety. So it's not just that you're doing safety, but are there multiple ways for walkers to move? Are there multiple ways that we make people safe and that you go? So a key issue that got a lot of votes early on when we sort of people to express things, we're thinking about pedestrian bridge over Granite Street as an idea, thinking about more east-west pedestrian access through all of the South Mill Yard so things can percolate over towards Elm, improving sidewalks and streetscapes throughout. One of the observations that came up is because this has, through its history, been an industrial and commercial zone, it's largely been designed for vehicles, not for walkers or cyclists. But as the uses change, as residential goes in, as more ballpark uses take place, as events take place, that needs to change. The infrastructure needs to accommodate the pedestrian. And improving overall connectivity. You've got some great pieces where things do connect for pedestrians, but there might be functional gaps where it feels unsafe, or the sidewalk may be slightly narrower. How do you fill those gaps so you have a seamless pedestrian experience? Parallel to that is increasing bicycle accessibility. These slides are illustrative. They're not meant to say, hey, we think you should do this. But that idea of, are there more connected multi-use bike paths? There are currently ones that feed in, but are they linking with each other? Do they connect? That mobility corridor on that B&M railroad line can be multiple use, can have different lanes on it, so that can help. Is there other opportunities for separated bike lanes? And once you arrive, if you've given this infrastructure to get people around, can they park those bikes when they get there? Those are things the participants put up. Yep, next. River walks and parks really came up strongly, and it's interesting that so many people felt passionate about this. Celebrating the river as a destination, finding more opportunities to do that, connecting existing river walk segments, and making them feel more safe and connected to each other. The opportunity for where can you do more public parks and public art, which reinforces that experience. Uplighting at bridges and trees to both increase safety but also add visual interest. And cleaning up the river smell came up as well. Next. What I'm going to go into is that as folks looked at the uses in this zone, the new uses that have come in, and sort of what's the vision for the future, is that there are opportunities for redevelopment. And I think that's a really, the group chose that word very carefully. That it's not a mandate for change. It doesn't say these things happen immediately. But as things happen over time, where are there opportunities for redevelopment to happen? Things that people talked about were having multi-use buildings, so not just single-use plots of land, but multi-use buildings, having additional housing uses, and especially having attractions and dynamic uses that draw people from other parts of the city. If you get more connectivity, they need reasons to go. And so how does that happen? And an underlying part of that is revisiting zoning, both in terms of as a regulatory tool, but what does it encourage? How does parking play with all of that so that your underlying system? Next. So the other priorities that got votes that people thought about as ideas, and we don't want to lose them, and we have the full minutes, is improving streetscapes and lighting for safety throughout. Maintaining what you build was a big issue, and sort of saying that if we're going to have great systems and great infrastructure, there's got to be a commitment to maintain that at a high level. Placemaking and branding, that if you have a great dynamic series of uses in a zone, how does the world know about that? How does your citizens know about that to come there? So that you make excellent spaces for them to gather, but they also hear about it, learn about it, and it becomes a place they want to go. And increasing transportation options. On the books for your community for a long time has been a transportation hub that connects things like trolleys, things like buses, things like bike lanes where they come in. If rail comes, where does it connect? Where do those things take place? And this area we're talking about has been the theoretical location for that. So that was something that needed to be incorporated as well. So I want to very carefully use the language that we could have just stopped the presentation and said, we're going to give you this laundry list of things that look great, and I've looked down the audience and lots of you are nodding at, so clearly there's some enthusiasm for it. But one of the challenges of a charrette is to say, how do these things look on the ground if we imagine them being on the ground? So what we put together, and mind you, we've been working since 8 this morning, and the drawing people have essentially been working since noon, is to put together some concepts to explore those priorities I just articulated. So if we're thinking about more connection moving from east to west, if we're thinking about improved streetscapes, if we're thinking about a multimodal transportation hub, well, where does that go on the ground? What does it look like? So I sort of want to walk through these, and this is what you will look at your tables. So I'm not going to be giving you your only look at this. Is that these are conceptual only. These have not gone to elected officials. These have not gone to property owners. We've taken the input we heard today. We've put those on paper because what we want to do is have a good dialogue with you that moves past the theoretical, where you look at things and react and say, I'm not sure that's there. Or, boy, I like that. I never thought of that. And you'll get to do that at the table with the people who've been working all day. So we've got two concepts that we want to show. So let's show the first one. And I just want to give you some highlights. And again, you'll be taking a deep dive when you go to your table. So the first one is one that we sort of think of as an expanded downtown. And the reason is that it is really articulated more to the north. And what it does is to create some connections that are up here, this high level. Let me orient you. This is Elm. This is that rail moving through. This is the commercial and South Commercial going through. SNU, the garage, the ballpark, the hotel, and then the residential down here. So as we think about those movements, there's a couple. There's a turn that comes up and meets Elm here. But there's also this opportunity to connect with that old disused rail bed and go all the way out to Queen City Ave on that as you go out. Located here is the opportunity for that transit hub to be located, where you're at a key intersection, you're at rail, you're at walkability to lots of your dense uses that's located there. The next option is one that shifts south. And we've labeled this sort of a new district because it essentially leaves these things intact. And it says that that movement coming out, trying to make that east-west connection, is taking place further south. And so here, we're making this connection across. This is the gas company right here. This is that transit hub shifted south. This is making this movement through and out to Queen City. But again, we've maintained this ability to have a connection that comes through on that disused rail net and come out. So we're looking to make multiple points where we're reweaving a streetscape back together to give multiple chances of movement so that not everything is siphoned to one location as we're moving out. Let's go to the next slide. So the heart of this is the chance for you to sit in small groups at a table with folks who were here all day, who are now over-caffeinated and tired. I'm on cup 9. I don't know how the rest of the team is. But a chance to really sort of look at those, ask questions about them, where did that come from? But just as importantly, on these tables are Post-it notes, are pens, and what we want you to do is as ideas and reactions come to you, is we want to capture those. So we want you to sort of self-scribe and write down your thoughts and ideas and reactions and post those things up. We want to hear about those. But we don't want you to do it in a static way where you don't have a guide. And so the guides, and I want to make sure, so Ted, you're going to be working this table up at the front. I will be working the one right behind the camera. And other folks who are working at other tables just want to stand up so I know who's working. Paul, are you going to be at the back? Okay. And then Mike is going to be over here, right? Okay. And then Mike again? Lisa. Oh, Lisa's going to be over here. Okay, sorry. You pointed and raised. So really, that's the heart of tonight. And so we are at 7:22. What we want to do is give you ample opportunity to sit with us, talk with us, hear about what happened today. We've consciously left out on the tables the materials that we had to work with during the charrette. So the agendas are out there, some of the base maps are out there, and I think you'll find it's a really lively discussion because we got excited by thinking about all these concepts and would love to explain them to you in more detail. And then when you're done, you don't need to stay till the full 8:30. You're welcome to, absolutely. But we also realize we all have lives to go back to. And so we invite you all to sort of evenly disperse to tables, hopefully, and talk with us about those. We'll capture your ideas and sort of end the charrette on that way. One thing I do want to note as a piece of this is I'm going to have a pad of paper up here. If you are interested in staying in touch with this process, we urge you to write down your email address so that we can send you information as we move through this process. So I think I'll actually do it at the projector table so I don't mess up Ted's process up here. So with that, just like we did during the charrette, I'm going to ask you to disperse to your tables, and we'll start talking one-on-one. Nope, you go to where there's a room or space or somebody you're interested in talking to.